Ontario, a place to grow. Choosing to move to Ontario is a choice one would never forget. The province is abundant in history, cultures, ethnicities, and so much more. Home to many sports teams, cultures, and art. Within the province, the largest city in Canada and Canada's capital city can be found. Ontario is composed of a diverse group of people, industries, and many other things. There are problems in the province, but that doesn't change the fact that Ontario is a great place to visit and a great place to live. What defines the province the most is its people. With a population of 13,448,494 and estimated to be 14,659,616 by the end of 2019, Ontario is the most populous province in the country. The vast province has a population density of 14.8 residents per square kilometer, and its doubling time, the time it takes for the population to double, is around 40 years. With a birth rate of 9.9 births per thousand residents and a death rate of 7.5 deaths per thousand residents, the province has a natural increase rate of 2.4 per thousand residents. Immigration is quite prominent in the province, with 29.1% of Ontario's population being foreign-born. That's nearly 1 in 3 residents. The province has an immigration rate of 9.5 per thousand residents and an emigration rate of 1.7 per thousand residents. This leaves the province with a net migration rate of 7.8 per thousand residents. The province is still growing with a population growth rate, or PGR, of 10.2 per thousand residents, a PGR of 1.02%. However, it should be noted that the government of Ontario claims that the PGR is 1.7%. The average age of the province was 41 years in 2018, and a dependency load, the portion of the population not part of the workforce, is 34.6%. In the province, there are 418,620 more females than males, with 51.5% of the population being female. Ontario's natural increase rate is declining, and the province is becoming more and more dependent on immigration. Out of the new immigrants that come to Canada, 39% choose to settle in Ontario. Of those immigrants, 68.8% come from Asia, including the Middle East, 9.8% come from the Caribbean, Central and South America, followed by 9.6% that come from Europe. Lastly, the remaining 8.3% come from Africa. 14.7% of Asian immigrants come from India, 12.5% come from China, 11.3% come from the Philippines, 5.4% come from Pakistan, and 4.5% from Iran. The remainder comes from other nations. The Greater Toronto Area, or GTA, is a great example of a cultural mosaic. More than 50% of residents in the GTA identify as a visible minority. In the province, almost 3 in 10 Ontarians identified as a visible minority. Around 63.5% of those were not born in Canada. People of South Asian, Chinese, Black, and Filipino backgrounds represent nearly 3 in 4 of Ontario's visible minorities. In the latest census, around 250 ethnic origins were reported. The largest were Canadian, followed by English, Scottish, Irish, French, German, Italian, Chinese, East Indian, and Dutch. Ontario is also home to many religions. Christianity is the most common religion, with Roman Catholicism being the most prominent denomination at 31.4% of Ontarians. Other religions include Islam, Hinduism, Judaism, Sikhism, and Buddhism. It should also be noted that 23% of Ontarians have no religious affiliation. Ontario has always been a province of immigrants. Right now, without immigrants, the province's population would be expected to start decreasing shortly. Before 1812, many Loyalists, supporters of the British monarchy, Quakers, and Mennonites left the United States for Canada. Later on, the province would receive more immigrants from Ireland and Great Britain. Between 1896 and 1929, many immigrants came from Germany, Scandinavia, Russia, Poland, Ukraine, and Italy. From 1929 to 1945, there were very few immigrants, as this was the Great Depression and Second World War. After World War II, European immigration continued, and a large portion of migration into Ontario came from other provinces. As well, many French-speaking Ontarians have ancestors from Quebec. Today, Ottawa contains the largest concentration of Franco-Ontarians. After 1965, the province began seeing more immigrants from Asia and Latin America. Many of these immigrants settled in the GTA. Growth in many areas of Ontario has slowed due to the dropping birth rate, except in the GTA where it is increasing. Some people also choose to leave the province. Many that leave the province go to the United States and the western provinces due to employment opportunities. The distribution of the population in Ontario varies greatly. In Northern Ontario, the population is more concentrated. Residents tend to live in towns with transportation or natural resource industries. In Southern Ontario, the population is more dispersed as it is mostly farmland. However, there are a few areas where population is concentrated due to towns and cities like Guelph and Waterloo. Meanwhile, linear distribution is found by the western shore of Lake Ontario. This area is known as the Golden Horseshoe. It is full of towns and cities and extends from Oshawa to St. Catharines. Today, 13.8% of Ontarians live in rural areas and are facing many issues, the main one being the struggle for rural communities to attract and retain residents. In 2015, Ontario's GDP or gross domestic product was $763.276 billion and the GDP per capita was $55,322. Currently, 7.5 million Ontarians are employed. The median household income was $74,287 in 2015. In the goods producing sector, where 1 in 5 Ontarians work, manufacturing and construction are the two most prominent industries. Ontario also contains half of the nation's manufacturing workers and has many dairy, livestock, and forage farms. In Northern Ontario, forestry and mining are both very important. As well, Kitchener-Waterloo and Canada are well known in the information technology industry and are nicknamed Silicon Valley North. Meanwhile, Toronto is home to many companies in the service producing sector where 4 in 5 Ontarians work. Employed. More prominent services include wholesale and retail trade, healthcare, and social assistance. The Toronto Stock Exchange is Canada's largest stock exchange. Major banks, insurance companies, brokerage houses, and large firms are found in Toronto. The cities of Ottawa and Toronto are also the main centers for public services. In 2017, Ontario used 152 terawatt-hours of power. Of that energy, more than half came from nuclear energy, with the rest coming from renewable sources. Like everywhere else, climate change is a major issue in Ontario. The current Ontario government put in place their own Made in Ontario plan. This plan includes more permissive targets such as bringing greenhouse gas emissions to 30% below 2005 emission levels by 2030. Other features include reducing air and water pollution. However, this plan has been highly criticized. Ontario's own independent Auditor General has said that the plan is not using sound evidence. But under the previous government, Ontario has already taken major steps in reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Many tourist attractions also exist in Ontario, such as Niagara Falls, the CN Tower, and Parliament Hill. Like the rest of Canada, Ontario faces many Indigenous issues. Currently, Indigenous people make up 2.8% of Ontario's population. Their population has grown significantly faster than the non-Indigenous population. The vast majority are First Nations, with the rest being Métis. With an average age of 6, their population is much younger than the rest of Ontario. However, the Indigenous population faces many more issues than the non-Indigenous population. The median annual income for Indigenous people in Ontario is $7,000 less than the non-Indigenous population. High school completion among the Indigenous people is lower than non-Indigenous people. However, when on a reserve, that rate drops even more. Only 53% have some form of post-secondary education compared to 65% of non-Indigenous people. The life expectancy for Indigenous people sits at 71 years, more than 11.6 years less than the non-Indigenous population. Lastly, Indigenous people have a higher rate of incarceration. With all that, both the federal and provincial governments are working hard on a truth and reconciliation front. Another issue in Ontario is currently the hallway medicine crisis. Right now, many hospitals operate above 100% occupancy rates. In Ontario, the number of beds for 1,000 residents sits lower than the international average. The main issue is that the average wait time is 16.3 hours in emergency rooms and patients being treated on stretchers in hallways. The cause is a lack of funding, which results in a lack of staff, beds, and space. The government seeks to solve this crisis by funding more video visits and creating new beds. However, the plan has drawn criticism for allegedly turning towards privatization. Like any other province, there are of course issues in Ontario, but as one of the most diverse provinces, one that is constantly growing, Ontario is a great place to visit and to make your home. Come and see the great people who make Ontario great and call it home. The province is yours to discover and a place to grow.